Greetings and salutations, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well today. Today I have an assortment of terrifying encounters that I really want to share with you. Before we get into these encounters, though, a couple links. As you know, I rely on my Patreon, my PayPal, and my merch to help this channel to continue to grow and go. Those links are in the description below. I also have a second channel for creepypasta, fanfiction, and scary voice acting. Stories that they just don't fit on this channel. Now, if that's anything that you're into, follow that link. Give those stories a listen. You may or may not like what you hear. Also, Dogman, Frightening Encounters, Volume 1, written by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeffrey Nadolny, is available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes. The link to that is in the description as well. Now, interestingly enough, I got an email today from Luke. Luke has since moved off of the property in Taylor, Mississippi, and he's followed his dreams. I'm going to have a chat with him later on during the week, maybe tomorrow. I'm not sure when, whenever our schedules collide, and I will keep you guys in the mix on that. But he's got something interesting he wants to share with us. Now, I've taken enough of your time. Let's get on with today's upload. Shall we? Today's first encounter. Last year, I was living in a small mountain town in central southern Colorado, in the Rio Grande National Forest. Super small town. Ute natives were tragically killed in the whole area of the town. I don't usually get creepy vibes when I'm there, but it's definitely weird in many ways. I was in my car at around 2 in the morning with a friend. We were parked outside our house looking down the road with only the street light across the street lighting up the area. From 15 yards in front of us, we see a large animal emerge from the darkness and catch the light. We started asking each other, "What is it? It's so big." Like the size of a small horse or large deer. It walks towards us and stands 1 yard away from my door. We're frozen, unable to move while we stare at it so close to us. And I say, "Is that a wolf?" It's all I could think it could be. Tall, completely silver, looked like a wolf from a movie. As it stood so close to us, it looks up at the sky, to the left and then to the right. Then it runs away towards the large cliffs at the back of the town, where the abandoned mines are and the forest begins. We were stunned, stayed frozen and silent for minutes until we started laughing. Eventually calming down and went outside, confused as hell. After that, I told some coworkers, thinking how cool it was that I saw a wolf. They all said it was impossible. No wolves have lived there for decades. So I researched, and they're right. No wolves have been here for like 40 years. Could be some sort of miracle if I had seen one, especially a gray one. As I look at more pictures of wolves, my memory becomes clearer. What I saw was too tall and too silver to even be a gray wolf. My friend and I have not forgotten one detail of the story. I'm sure it wasn't a dog. If it was, that's the biggest dog in existence. I remember the world washing away as I stared at its shiny fur. It was the most majestic animal I had ever seen. There were chills covering my body, and I could barely breathe. Today's second encounter. This happened roughly a month or so ago, so it was getting darker quick where we live. And my dad and I were heading home after getting a COVID test done or something. It was pretty dark. The road to my house has fields on one side and a thin veil of woods on the other, which, after a short walk, would open right up to the fields. I wasn't paying too much attention, but I noticed the car slow down some, and I looked up and saw this thing that looked to be a person standing in the middle of the road. My dad turned up the brights, and its proportions made it pretty obvious that this was not a human. Its legs and arms were almost triple that of its torso. It was just standing in the middle of the road. It didn't turn around when we pulled up to it. We were about 10 or so feet away, but it seemed easily capable of crossing that distance with little struggle. My dad, after a few moments, turned the car around and sped off in the opposite direction. I tried to ask what the thing was, even though it was pretty obvious that he didn't know either. The only way I think I could describe it would be a heavily emaciated white figure with impossibly long limbs. We took the other road home and saw nothing, but we both know we saw something that was not human. Today's third encounter. My friend is Mohawk, raised Seneca Haudenosaunee native. He has received some training in shamanism. He has a full kit, his mask, full regalia, and the whole deal. One evening, my girlfriend at the time, H, this guy C, and I were at a local conservation area. He felt a presence and expressed an interest in returning at night to hold a ceremony. We agreed and returned 2 weeks later. There are wooden stairs set into the ground leading to the top of a lookout area, which, at the time, was under reconstruction. We arrived at midnight, climbed the stairway, and crested the hilltop. He dressed in his regalia, lit some sage, and began to chant in Mohawk. The vibe changed immediately. I remember scanning the tree line. As I looked around the area on the second pass along the line, one of the taller silhouettes was gone. Had some 10-foot person or entity been standing between me and the trees? Before I could begin to wonder at the missing hump in the dark tree line, C stopped his chanting. Something is here. I think it's a shaman spirit. He turned and began to chant again. At this point, down off of the hill, I heard a screech. The best description I can think of is a garage door in desperate need of oiling, closing loudly. Then we heard it again. H turned to me with her eyes wide and said, "It's getting closer." The thing proceeded to approach us somewhere above in the trees in the forest to our right. It was calling in a regular interval as it approached, this loud scree, scree, scree. As we tracked it with our ears, we looked straight at each other in the dark and then straight up. The regularity of the cry meant the next one should have been directly overhead. There was nothing above us against the starry background, and no further cry was heard. C then wrapped up his ceremony, gathering his things, and we started to leave. He told us he had a vision of a red wolf watching us from the forest. He thought that whatever the spirit was, there was powerful and definitely not benevolent. I made the stairs before C and H and proceeded down them. A few steps in, and the flashlight showed a black mass on the stairs that most definitely hadn't been there when we came up. A crow wing, not a feather or parts like an animal, had been at it. The whole damn wing. I remember towing the edge to make sure it was legit what I was seeing. C came up behind me. "Please tell me you didn't touch it." I told him I used my shoe to nudge it a little. He immediately got out his sage and washed the smoke all around me in a full body smudge, chanting in Mohawk as he did so. Then we went back to the car and got back to town. We commented that it still felt weird in the car, as it had on the hilltop. Dropped C off at his house, then me and my girlfriend went home. Got home and went to bed. H says she's going to read in the living room for a bit. I kiss her goodnight and go to bed. Sometime later, I'm awakened by a quiet knock on the door. I say, "Come in." It's my friend C. He looks scared. H said I could come and see you. Are you okay? He told me then that it followed us home. What? What do you mean? He described how he had gone to bed shortly after we dropped him off, fell asleep, and was awoken suddenly because he couldn't breathe. There was a pressure on his chest, like someone or something sitting on him, trying to suffocate him. As he strained for breath, just as he was worried about losing consciousness, the pressure lifted. He got 1 or 2 deep sucks of breath in, and then the weight would return. He finally decided to come see if I was okay, and if maybe we could fight back together if I wasn't. I told him I'd sleeping fine, but if he wanted to stay, he was welcome. He said H had already agreed that it was a good idea and would sleep on the couch. C laid beside me. Also, as soon as he did, I felt it. My chest was constricted by an unseen weight. I couldn't take any air. C grabbed my hand as I noticed he wasn't able to draw in either. And over the next long while, the same thing he described as happening to him at his place happened to both of us at mine. Pressure and gasping. And just when our lungs started to burn with a neat whoosh, the pressure was gone. 1 deep breath, maybe 2, and slam, that unnatural weight on our chests again, over and over and over. Eventually, the assault either ended or we passed out. I remember waking up at some point much later, feeling someone beside me, remembering C, and being surprised when I saw H lying there. I remember saying, "Oh, it's you," and hearing a questioning mumble from her before sleep overtook me again. The first thing next morning, H asked me what I meant by, "Oh, it's you," comment in the wee hours. I explained I was surprised that C had left. "C," she says, looking at me like I'm crazy. "Yeah, when did he leave?" "He hadn't come over." I was insistent he had. I know the difference between reality and dreamland, but no. Apparently, I had a very vivid but totally normal nightmare. Nothing to worry about. Chalk it up as the strangest dream experience I had ever had. And we go on with our lives. 2 days later, H comes running into the apartment after work. She's a barista at a very cool indie coffee shop downtown that C and I both frequented. She explained that C had been in, and I was to go to his place immediately. "Huh? Why?" "H, is everything okay?" She looked uncomfortable. Not exactly scared, but not okay. She refused to give me details, and to this day I am so grateful she didn't. She just explained she had sent him home and told him to wait for me there. I got in the car and head to C's, knock on the front door as Mom lets me in. I head to his room in the back, knock and enter. "Hey, Ven, how are you doing?" he asks. I tell him fine. I'm just wondering if everything's okay. You were gone when I woke up the other day. Immediately, a tingle went through my whole body, and a chill iced my spine. "Excuse me?" "See, yeah, you came over the other night after you dropped me off because something had followed us home and was suffocating you as you slept. When you laid down with me, it started hitting both of us. It still gives me chills to this day." C had come into the coffee shop that afternoon and asked H if I was doing okay after leaving his place. He expressed some interested confusion. He told her his story, and without saying a single word about me or my experience, she told C very calmly that she was done work at 5 and would very much appreciate it if he could be home around then, because she was sending me over there as soon as she got home. He was startled and agreed to do so. The reason I appreciate this is she didn't ruin the wonder by revealing the truth to us. She let us discover it to each other. Something did indeed come home with us, and apparently disguised itself as a close friend to conduct its paranormal torment. Came to C disguised as me, then came to me looking like him. Today's fourth encounter. My brother and I used to go out to this somewhat secluded mountain creek in southwest Virginia before life and responsibilities got in the way. It backs up on Jefferson National Forest, and judging by Google Earth, it's pretty secluded. The road up to it ends abruptly, but turned into a long, overgrown, and degraded road along the creek that we had discovered led to a very scenic, boulder-strewn swimming hole that we would hang out at and have a few drinks and some smokes. To get there, you had to go past an obviously long abandoned coal mine with some tall pines and mine rubble. One day we were surprised when a huge wolf-sized mangy German shepherd-looking dog slid down from the mine and daintily made his way to us with a big smile. We were hesitant that it had rabies, but he seemed to be aware and sort of greeted us before just sort of following us to our spot. We thought it was odd a stray would be in the middle of the woods, but we sort of laughed it off and let him chill out with us at our spot while we fished and sipped our beer. The next few times we went out there he would be, sliding down the coleslaw to hang out. So we dubbed him our buddy, Mr. Croy, from a family name we had noticed at a derelict cemetery nearby. We became more comfortable with each other, so he'd just sit by while we sat and chilled on the boulders. Our only issue was that he smelled terrible, like rotting sulfur, but he was our buddy, so we let it slide. We also noted he seemed strangely human in his mannerisms, especially in his eyes. Thus, Mr. Croy became a family enigma. We would joke about being our drinking buddy. We even tried to get him to come home with us, but he would never go past this grove of huge, dead hemlock trees. Come next spring, we decided to head out there to see our coal mine friend, but he was nowhere to be found, at least seen. He had a heavy gait, and you could hear his distinct thump as something followed us, and we both looked at each other as nothing was there. Pushing it off as nothing, and sad our buddy was gone, we continued to our spot, but we were still obviously followed by heavy footsteps. We sat at our spot talking and sipping on beer when we got the distinct rotten egg smell we associated with him. At that point, we were getting weird vibes and somewhat spooked, so we went back to the car. We never really went there after that, as life got in the way, and he started dating, I started working. We tried to go back a few years ago, but there was like some sort of white supremacist encampment at the entrance that made us too uncomfortable to venture any further. We still talk about it to this day when it comes up, our mysterious wilderness dog friend. Today's fifth encounter, Atoka, Oklahoma. During this past spring and summer, we experienced heavy rainfall, and my two sons, my mother, my nephew, and myself have seen something ape-like on our place. Now, we live about a half a mile from a nearby family park, so being interested in wildlife biology and knowing that there are things that even scientists can't explain, I'm inclined to believe that there is some sort of primate that lives in our area. My horses acted strangely in that they refused to hang out in the grove of trees. That is their usual hangout during the time that this creature was there. My mother saw it, probably the most clearest. I saw only the back side of it, and it cleared a blackberry bush that was over 6 feet tall like it was nothing. Now the thing we all saw was white in color, not the usual reddish color that most people report. The first instance would actually be when the rainfall started. We have horses, and one of our horses was in a lot separate from the other three. Our horses are very gentle, and not much spooks them. Around the middle of March of '07, one of our horses impaled himself on a metal fence post when something spooked him. I'm not 100% sure that this instance is related to the rest of my experiences, but I feel that it's worth mentioning, since it was around the time we started seeing this creature and the rainfall was usually heavy. Around the next week or two after the horse was impaled, my two boys, ages 12 and 14, started seeing, as they described it, a white creature that would be underneath a large old tree in our front yard and would growl and run off when they got close. It would run toward 2 abandoned trailer houses that sit on our property. This happened on 2 or 3 occasions, and it was well after Muddy Boggy had floated the bottom land near our house. Muddy Boggy River bottom is only about a half a mile from our house. My mother actually was the closest to this thing when she stepped out onto our front porch one night and saw it standing outside our window, only a few feet from her. Imagine her surprise. She didn't believe that Bigfoot existed. She still won't say it, but she knows what she saw, which was a creature that was white, about the size of my 12-year-old son, who is rather small for a boy's age. It was about 4.5 feet tall, standing on 2 legs, about 70 to 100 pounds, with ape-like features. It had all white hair all over its body. It looked at my mother and turned and ran off through the tall weeds. We weren't able to mow due to the wet conditions, jumped over the electric fence that was for our horses, and went down on all 4s and ran off towards some trees. The next day I went off up the pasture to check it out. I wasn't entirely sure at this point what was going on. I went up to the grove of trees where, until it rain started, our horses stayed most of the time, but about that time my kids and my mother started seeing this thing. My horses stopped going up in the trees and stayed close to the barn and the house. So while up there, my 14-year-old son and I scoped it out. I never felt threatened or scared, but did feel like I was being watched. He said he did as well, but just thought he was being paranoid. Then I walked across the pasture to the other side and found what looked like a large handprint in the grass and mud. It looked like what your hand would look like if you bent down with your knuckles bent and your thumb out for support. Only this print was larger than the animal we were seeing. The next evening, we saw what appeared to be a white large creature jump over the blackberry bush, which is about 6 to 7 feet tall, like it was nothing. That was the craziest thing I had ever seen, and that was the last time it was seen. We never smelled anything, and never felt threatened. We have lots of animals, even 2 wild pigs that I bottle fed in a pen out front. Nothing. No cat, dog, pig was harmed. Only the horse at the beginning of all this. It only lasted about 6 weeks or so. When the river went back to its banks, the animal disappeared. It was about 4.5 feet tall, about 70 to 100 pounds, white. It stood on 2 legs as well as 4. The only sound it made was a growling noise when the kids got close, and it looked like an ape. Alright guys, there you have 5 terrifying or terrifyingly interesting encounters. I actually enjoyed the Native American, I can't call it a skinwalker because it's not, but it was something else. And being of Mohawk lineage, I'm going to contact some friends and family and see if anybody has ever heard of anything like this, because it was terribly interesting to me. Almost like a dark presence, a shape-shifting creature. But what's interesting is that when it came to the homes, it lied down next to its friend, or, the friend that it was mimicking, and held their hand. If you go back and listen, when he was lying on his bed and he thought C came in and lied next to him and explained, "Hey, I'm scared for you. Something followed us home." They held hands, in not in that way, but in the way of friendship, in the way of comforting And yet this entity or whatever still attacked. So I'm almost thinking that maybe 2 things followed them home. One for protection, and one that was looking to either harm or just freak them out. So I don't know. That's what I got when I read it and thought about it. So I hope you guys enjoyed tonight's upload as much as I did. Like I said, I've got a update from Luke, and we'll be sharing that very soon. Also, I got a message from Ronnie today from Tennessee, and he had something very interesting happen to him the other day, and I'm going to give him a call today, later, sometime, I don't know, and figure out what exactly it was that he saw or felt. I don't know. We'll just get into it when I have him on the show again. All right, guys, and yes, for those wondering, I did reach out to Clayton. He was one of the callers in the Q&A, and I hopefully will have him on. He doesn't have an encounter, and we've got to actually sit down and talk about how we're going to do the interview. He was asking very informed questions to Victor, but questions also along the line that Victor couldn't answer, as he's a hunter. So when we do the next Q&A, I was talking to Victor and someone else about parameters being set up, and if I'm gonna start screening the questions, they'll be live, but it's got to be along the lines of a Dogman hunt or a Sasquatch hunt or something along that. And also, I'm going to, when the person asks the question, I'm kind of going to set it up to where the question is asked, Victor answers. When Victor's done, then the caller can then proceed with their next. It's a Q&A, and we want Victor to answer these questions as best and fully as possible without getting cut off. I've seen quite a bit of comments in the comment section, and I agree. But I can see the other side as well, excitement, So as much as I don't like doing this, I'm going to kind of have to direct the Q&A a little bit in the direction to where it stays what it's meant to be. And that's a Q&A about Victor hunting, or what possibly Victor may know. He's not a scientist. He's never claimed it. He's never studied the paranormal. He's never studied alien life form. So these are things that do not fit with the Q&A. Do they fit on this channel? Abso-freaking-lutely. Everything fits on this channel. But the Q&A is centered around him. So I hope you guys can understand what I'm saying, and not take it out of context. I'm not trying to single anyone out or point a finger. I'm just saying it needs to be this way so it stays on the path that Victor and I kind of came up with. You can ask him whatever you want, as long as it pertains to a Dogman, a Bigfoot, a werewolf, or possibly something else that he may know. He knows a little bit about the reptilians, not a lot. So that's what I'm going to have to do. And I apologize, because I hate directing my interviews or shows like that, because to me that's when it feels like I'm overstepping, but apparently I have to. So, I don't know, guys. I hope you guys have a great night, and I got some really good stuff lined up. Also, I think Victor and I are going to be recording the large Nephilim-like Bigfoot that he just encountered, that hunt. I know he's home with his family the first time in 25 years for Christmas, so, but he did mention getting that out, and I might save that for Christmas Eve, or do it on Christmas Eve. I'm not sure how it's going to work out, but anyway, thanks for all your support, and, you know, really, honestly, thank you for making this channel what it is, guys, because without great people backing me, this channel would not be what it is now. So thank you. May the Great Spirit guide you through your path and walk with you throughout it. Have a great day, guys.